Have you ever noticed how love rarely breaks all at once? Most of the time, it cracks slowly, in silence, hidden inside ordinary days. This is one of those stories, not about monsters or heroes, but about choices. About a love built in small routines, lost in quiet betrayals, and paid for with blood. What begins on a peaceful mountain, inside a simple house, turns into a confession that can't be undone. Along the way, you'll witness devotion, suspicion, betrayal, revenge, and a truth most people don't like to face. Because sometimes, the greatest tragedy isn't losing love, it's what love turns us into. So stay with me until the end. This story doesn't offer easy answers, only uncomfortable reflections. And if it grips you the way it gripped me, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. More stories like this are waiting for you. He used to say their love wasn't loud, it was quiet, like the mountains around them, steady and patient. Every morning began the same way, the smell of wood smoke, the sound of her footsteps on the dirt floor. She'd hum while sweeping, not to sing, just to fill the silence with something warm and alive. He'd watch her from the doorway, pretending to fix his saddle, already missing her before leaving. Love, for them, lived in gestures, not in words shouted across valleys. A shared look, a half-smile, a nod that said, "We're okay." That kind of love sneaks under your skin and settles there for good. They worked side by side, not because they had to, but because it felt wrong not to. When he chopped wood, she brought water. When she cooked, he stayed close, just listening. Sometimes they talked about nothing, and somehow it felt like everything. She teased him about his silence, he teased her about her stubborn hope. Those small jokes became their language, their shield against the world. Anyone watching would think it was simple life, almost boring. But simplicity can be the deepest form of happiness. At night, they'd sit outside, sharing the same blanket, counting stars they'd never reach. He'd talk about tomorrow like it was a promise, not just another day. She listened with her head on his shoulder, fingers tracing old scars. Scars from work, from life, from things he never explained fully. She didn't ask, and he didn't hide, that was their balance. Trust grew in those silences, thick and unquestioned. And trust, once planted, feels eternal, until it isn't. Their love showed up in the way she waited for him to return. Always at the same hour, always with the same anxious glance toward the trail. When his horse appeared, her face lit up before he even dismounted. He pretended not to notice, but that look fed his soul. It made the long days feel shorter, the hard rides worth it. Love like that makes a man believe nothing bad can touch him. That belief is dangerous because it feels so true. He believed the mountain protected them, like an old guardian watching silently. High enough to be forgotten, far enough to be safe from rumors and eyes. Their little house of straw and wood felt like a kingdom. Not rich in things, but rich in certainty. They had routines, and routines feel like promises when shared. Every shared habit became proof of forever. And forever, at that moment, felt honest. Sometimes she'd stop mid-task, look at him, and smile for no reason. He'd ask what it was, and she'd say, "Nothing, just you." Those words stayed with him, echoing in his chest. They became his armor against doubt and fear. He held on to them on cold nights and long rides. Love, when it's real, builds memory upon memory, each one heavier than the last. And that's how the tragedy truly began, inside a love that felt unbreakable. Because when something feels that solid, you stop checking for cracks. You stop listening for footsteps that don't belong. You stop noticing pauses that last a second too long. Happiness can make you careless without asking permission. And somewhere in that comfort, something unseen was already shifting. But that only starts to show in the next chapter. At first, the doubts didn't arrive like thunder, they came like dust on boots. Small enough to ignore, easy to brush off with a laugh or an excuse. She paused a little longer when he spoke, as if choosing words carefully. Her eyes drifted away mid-conversation, not far, just enough to notice. He told himself everyone gets tired, everyone gets distracted sometimes. Love makes a man generous with explanations. Too generous, maybe. There were changes in routine, nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. She'd finish chores faster, then find reasons to leave the house alone. A walk to the stream, a visit to a neighbor, errands that didn't need rushing. He noticed the way she fixed her hair before leaving. Not vanity, he thought. Habit, maybe boredom. Still, something twisted quietly in his chest. A feeling without a name is the hardest to fight. At night, the silence felt different, heavier than before. She still sat beside him, but her body leaned slightly away. Her laughter came quicker, but didn't linger like it used to. He caught her staring at nothing, then snapping back with a forced smile. "Just tired," she'd say, touching his hand briefly. That touch used to anchor him. Now it felt like reassurance for something unsaid. He began noticing what wasn't there. Fewer shared glances, fewer careless jokes, fewer questions about his day. Love hadn't vanished, it had thinned, stretched like fabric worn too often. He told himself love changes, matures, learns to breathe differently. That's what people say when they're afraid of the truth. Fear prefers philosophy over confrontation. It feels safer that way. One afternoon, he returned earlier than planned. The house was quiet, too quiet for that hour. Her things were there, but her presence wasn't. He waited, pretending patience, listening to the mountain breathe. When she came back, she startled like someone caught mid-thought. Her smile arrived late. Late smiles hurt more than silence. He started riding longer routes, thinking distance would clear his head. On the trail, memories argued with suspicion. Every good moment fought for her innocence. Every strange detail whispered another story. His heart stood in the middle, unsure which side to trust. That's the cruel place love puts you sometimes. Between faith and instinct. And then, one night, listening to the wind scrape the walls, something hardened. Not anger yet, resolve, cold and quiet. He realized doubt, once planted, doesn't die on its own. It grows teeth, it demands answers. He didn't speak it aloud, not yet. But inside, a promise was forming, sharp and final. A promise the mountain would soon hear. The night broke open the moment he heard the sound inside the house. It wasn't loud enough to be called a scream, but it carried weight. A sound soaked in pain, raw and unfinished, like breath tearing itself apart. His body reacted before his mind could catch up. Hands stiff, chest tight, heart pounding against his ribs. He knew right there that something sacred was cracking. And once that crack appears, nothing ever fits the same again. He didn't step inside, not yet. Fear doesn't always look like cowardice. Sometimes it looks like survival. He tied the reins slowly, forcing his hands to behave. Every second felt borrowed, unstable, fragile. The mountain stood silent, watching, as if it already knew the ending. He mounted the horse with a kind of violence, digging heels deep. Running felt safer than knowing. The gallop down the trail tore the night apart. Branches scratched his arms, wind burned his face. The rhythm of hooves became the only thing keeping him grounded. Each strike against the earth felt like a heartbeat he could control. Thoughts chased him, but none could keep up. Pain, cold, speed, these things are honest. They don't lie the way love sometimes does. As the town lights appeared, hope tried to resurrect itself. Maybe it was an accident, he thought. Maybe she slipped, maybe she was sick, maybe he was wrong. Hope is cruel when it arrives this late. It wears the mask of mercy but carries sharp edges underneath. He held on to it anyway, because letting go felt like death. And he wasn't ready for that yet. The doctor listened without rushing him. That silence felt heavier than judgment. Experienced eyes don't need long explanations. The doctor had seen fear dressed in many forms before. He nodded once, slow and careful, already understanding too much. They didn't speak of outcomes, only of urgency. Some rides don't need conversation. The return uphill felt nothing like the descent. The horse moved slower, as if sensing the weight ahead. Every step upward tightened something in his chest. The house waited above them, unseen but present. The lamp's faint glow haunted his thoughts, flickering like a warning. He imagined blood, imagined silence, imagined regret. The mind becomes its own executioner when left alone. The doctor rode beside him, steady, distant, professional. That calm felt unnatural against his internal chaos. He wanted to ask questions but feared the answers. What if this ride was already too late? What if the sound he heard was the last thing she ever said? Time stretched cruelly, mocking his urgency. The mountain didn't hurry for anyone. When they finally reached the house, the air felt different. Thicker, heavier, almost sacred in its stillness. The door looked the same, but he knew better now. Thresholds change you, even when they don't move. The doctor dismounted first, composed and ready. He followed, legs weak, breath shallow. This wasn't just a return, it was an entry into consequence. As they stepped closer, understanding settled in his bones. Whatever waited inside wasn't born tonight. It had roots, deep and tangled, reaching back in time. This night was only the harvest. The mountain had witnessed it all in silence. Love, doubt, absence, betrayal. None of it sudden. And the past was about to speak. Before doubt ever learned his name, life had a different rhythm. Mornings weren't rushed, they unfolded slowly, like the mist on the mountain. She woke first, always, moving quietly so she wouldn't disturb his sleep. He pretended to stay asleep longer just to hear her steps. That sound grounded him more than any prayer. It meant the world was still in place. It meant they were still in place. Their days were shaped by simple tasks done together. Fetching water, mending clothes, preparing meals that tasted like effort. They didn't talk much while working, and that was the beauty of it. Comfort lived in the absence of pressure. No need to impress, no need to perform. Just two people sharing space and purpose. That kind of intimacy grows quietly. At times, she'd stop mid-task and rest her head against his chest. No reason, no warning, just closeness. He'd wrap an arm around her without comment. These moments weren't planned, they just happened. And because they weren't forced, they felt eternal. He believed love was supposed to feel like this. Uncomplicated and honest. They spoke about the future in fragments, never full speeches. A bigger roof, maybe a few animals, maybe children someday. Not dreams shouted into the wind, but ideas shared softly. Plans that didn't demand urgency. Time felt like an ally back then. They trusted tomorrow without questioning today. That trust is powerful and fragile. Evenings were their favorite. The world slowed down enough to sit beside each other. They'd share stories, half-truths, memories shaped by laughter. She talked more, he listened better. Listening was his way of loving. She said he made silence feel safe. He never forgot that. He remembers thinking, more than once, that nothing could reach them there. The mountain felt like a wall, tall and protective. Distance from people meant distance from trouble. They believed isolation meant safety. What they didn't understand was this. Trouble doesn't need roads to arrive. Sometimes it comes through the heart. Looking back, the signs weren't obvious. Nothing loud, nothing cruel, nothing broken yet. Just small shifts that didn't matter at the time. A hesitation, a sigh, a look held too long. Those things seemed human, harmless. He had no reason to doubt. And that innocence made the fall steeper. Because everything that broke later was built here. In shared work, shared silence, shared hope. The love was real, that's what makes it hurt. This wasn't a story of neglect or emptiness. It was a story of fullness slowly leaking away. And somewhere in this past, another presence was forming. One he hadn't noticed yet. The truth didn't arrive screaming, it arrived disguised as familiarity. It wore a face he trusted, a voice he had welcomed before. Someone who had shared meals, laughter, and stories by the fire. That's how betrayal works, it borrows safety. It doesn't come from the shadows. It steps out of the circle you thought was unbreakable. And that's what makes it unforgivable. She didn't run away with a stranger. She chose someone who knew their routines. Someone who had ridden those same trails, sat on that same bench. A man who had heard him speak about love and future. That closeness turned the knife deeper. It wasn't just desire, it was calculation. And that hurt far worse. Her betrayal wasn't brave, it was careful. Stolen moments, quiet glances, shared silences behind his back. She didn't confront her unhappiness, she escaped it. Instead of breaking free, she slipped away. That's the cowardice of it all. Choosing comfort over honesty. choosing secrecy over truth. The man she chose knew exactly what he was doing. He knew the boundaries he was crossing. He knew the cost, and he paid nothing. That kind of betrayal feeds on proximity. It thrives where trust is thickest. And it leaves nothing untouched. Not friendship. Not family. Not memory. When the truth finally surfaced, it didn't feel like revelation. It felt like confirmation of something his body already knew. Every strange pause, every absence suddenly made sense. His chest burned, but not with surprise. With recognition. Because intuition had been whispering for a long time. And now it was screaming. He replayed moments he once cherished. Laughter that now felt staged. Touch that now felt borrowed. Love that had been split without his consent. The house, once sacred, felt contaminated. The mountain no longer protected him. It witnessed him. What broke him wasn't just that she loved another. It was who she chose to love. Someone he would have trusted with his life. Someone who smiled at him without guilt. That level of betrayal doesn't ask for forgiveness. It demands consequence. And in his heart, something irreversible began to form. The decision didn't come in a burst of rage. It arrived slowly, like poison in water. At first, he thought he could outride it, outwork it, outlast it. Men are taught to endure, not to feel, and he tried that path. But betrayal doesn't respect endurance. It waits, patient, until silence becomes unbearable. Every memory now carried a second face. And that second face kept staring back at him. He replayed her choices over and over, searching for a moment to stop time. A single word she could have said. A confession that might have spared them all. But she chose secrecy, and secrecy demands consequences. In his mind, justice and revenge blurred into one shape. That's how violence begins, not with madness, but with logic. A twisted, convincing logic. The night he made the decision felt calm, terrifyingly calm. No shaking hands, no racing heart. Just clarity, sharp and cold. He saddled the horse the same way he always had. Routine gave him strength, like muscle memory for the soul. This wasn't impulse anymore. This was resolve. When he found her, there were no dramatic words exchanged. No pleading speeches, no tears loud enough to save anyone. She looked at him and understood before he spoke. Understanding came too late to be useful. Fear finally replaced the confidence she had borrowed from secrecy. And for the first time, she had no place to hide. Not in silence. Not in lies. The act itself happened faster than memory can process. Violence always does. One moment stretches forever, the next disappears completely. When it was over, the world didn't stop. The mountain didn't collapse. The wind didn't mourn. Only his chest felt hollow, like something vital had been ripped out. Standing there, he realized revenge doesn't feel like victory. It feels like subtraction. Something gone that can never return. Her absence didn't heal his pain, it multiplied it. Guilt arrived immediately, heavy and merciless. But regret doesn't undo blood. It only teaches you too late. And then his thoughts turned to the other man. The one who smiled without consequence. The one who walked away untouched. The promise formed again, darker and louder now. This wasn't finished. One life taken didn't balance the scale. The hunt had only begun. Because when betrayal involves two hearts, rage rarely stops at one grave. Justice, in his mind, was incomplete. The mountain had seen one ending already. It would witness another if fate allowed. And somewhere beyond the trees, another man was still breathing. Unaware that he had been chosen. Unaware that the story wasn't over yet. I used to believe I was a good man. Not perfect, but honest enough to sleep at night. I worked, I loved, I stayed. That was my definition of decency. I never imagined my name would one day taste like iron in my mouth. I never imagined I'd carry silence like a crime. But here I am. When I close my eyes, I still see her the way she was before everything broke. Not on the ground, not afraid. I see her sweeping the floor, humming without thinking. That image fights the others every night. Sometimes it wins, sometimes it doesn't. Memory has no mercy when guilt holds the reins. It shows you everything. People think rage blinds you, but that's not true. Rage sharpens certain things. I remember every step I took, every breath I chose to ignore. I remember the calm more than the chaos. That's the part that scares me the most. I wasn't out of control. I was decided. I tell myself she left me first. That she killed what we had before I ever touched her. That betrayal is just another kind of violence. These thoughts help me breathe on darker nights. But they don't erase the weight in my chest. They don't silence the questions. They just postpone them. Sometimes I wonder who I became in that moment. Was I always capable of this? Or did love teach me how to destroy? There's no answer that brings peace. Only reflections that stare back without blinking. The mountain keeps my secrets well. Too well. I don't ask for forgiveness. I wouldn't know what to do with it if it arrived. Forgiveness implies repair, and some things don't repair. They just remain. Like scars you stop explaining. I live with mine quietly. It's easier that way. The nights are the hardest. That's when the faces line up in my mind. Hers. His. Mine. I hear the wind and mistake it for footsteps. Every sound could be him. Every shadow feels like a question. And part of me is still waiting. Because the story didn't end with her. It only slowed down. There's another name etched in my thoughts. Another debt my heart insists is unpaid. I don't know if I'll find him. I don't know what I'll do if I do. But the mountain knows I'm still listening. Stories like this often try to choose a side. They paint villains and victims in simple colors. But real life refuses that comfort. Here, no one walked away untouched. Not the woman who betrayed love for escape. Not the man who answered pain with blood. And not the one still walking free. Betrayal didn't save her from unhappiness. It only postponed it, dressed it in secrecy and borrowed affection. What she sought wasn't freedom, it was avoidance. And avoidance always collects interest. Her silence cost more than honesty ever would. Love broken quietly still bleeds loudly. It just takes longer to hear. Violence didn't heal him. It didn't restore dignity or erase humiliation. It only added another grave to his conscience. Revenge promised relief but delivered weight. The kind you carry forever, even when no one is watching. Blood doesn't wash betrayal away. It stains the hands that spill it. The mountain remains, indifferent and ancient. It watched love being built and watched it collapse. It didn't intervene, because life doesn't intervene either. It only records. Every step, every choice, every silence. Some lessons are taught without mercy, and some are learned too late. There's still a man breathing somewhere beyond those trails. A man who hasn't paid for the trust he shattered. Whether justice will ever reach him is uncertain. Whether revenge should is another question entirely. The story leaves that road untraveled, for now. Because some endings don't arrive quickly. They circle. This isn't a warning told with a raised finger. It's a truth whispered after everything is already done. Betrayal doesn't compensate emptiness. Homicide doesn't restore honor. Both destroy what little remains. And the cost is always higher than imagined. Always. What lingers isn't triumph or closure. It's absence. The echo of choices that can't be undone. Love that once felt eternal, now fractured into memory. And a man left walking forward without knowing where forward leads. That's the real ending here. Unfinished, heavy, human. Because some stories don't end. They wait. They follow. And they ask the listener a quiet question. What would you have done differently? What would you have chosen before it was too late? The mountain keeps listening. Stories like this don't end when the last word is spoken. They linger, because somewhere inside them, there's a mirror. Maybe you saw yourself in the love that was built slowly. Maybe in the silence that hid the betrayal. Or maybe in the moment where anger felt louder than reason. That's why this story matters, not you. Do you think betrayal justifies revenge? Do you believe love can survive honesty, but not secrecy? And if you were in his place, would you have walked away, or crossed the line too? I want to know what you felt while listening to this story. Tell me in the comments. Your perspective changes everything here. And now, it's your turn to shape the next story. Which song should we turn into a powerful, emotional narrative like this one? Leave your suggestion below, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because these stories don't just entertain, they stay with you.